Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. You're sitting on a content goldmine that nobody can find, produced by Marketing Profs and sponsored by Allego. I'm Valerie Witt, and I will be your moderator for today's event. So, before we begin, just a couple quick housekeeping reminders. First, if you experience any audio or visual problems, try refreshing the page. And if that doesn't work, log out and log back in. If you're on Wi Fi or you have multiple applications open, that could impact your experience. So, when in doubt, close it out. Check out the right hand side panel for some fun engagement options. First, you can use the chat to connect with everyone else here in the audience. And you can reply and send reactions to other comments you see there by hovering over them. Then use the Q&A tab instead to submit your questions for our speaker. So in there, you can also upvote other people's questions that are your favorites. And as soon as the presentation is finished, we'll get to as many of those questions as we can, starting with the most popular ones. There is a PDF of the deck available to download in the resources tab. And yes, you will get the recording once it's ready. We'll send you a notice when it's available. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an emoji button. Feel free to use that to share your reactions throughout the presentation. Now, I'd like to take a minute to thank Allego for sponsoring today's webinar. Allego is the only modern revenue enablement platform to lead across digital selling, content, learning, and coaching, powered by practical AI. Allego delivers the simplicity of an all in one platform without compromising depth, so teams can confidently know, show, and do what it takes to succeed. Now, please join me in welcoming Deniz Olcay, who is presenting You're Sitting on a Content Goldmine Nobody Can Find. Dennis has a sales-centric background, including sales training at Rain Group. In his previous role at Dun& Bradstreet, he was the VP of Product Marketing, managing a portfolio with more than $650 million in annual revenue. So he is intimately familiar with the challenges of selling virtually. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dennis. Please take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. So glad to have you here with us, taking time out of your day. I want to start with a question. How many of you and how much of the content your team has built in the last year do you think actually got used in a buyer conversation? Dramatic pause. For most teams, the honest answer is somewhere between not enough and almost none. And over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to make the case that most of you, let's be honest, are sitting on a content gold mine nobody can find. Not your buyers, not AI, not even your own sellers, at least not as much as you'd want them to. So we're going to diagnose why that happens. We're going to walk through a framework that fixes it and look at one customer of Allego's who lived through this and dug their way out. So let's get started. But before we dig in, quick about me. My name is Deniz Olcay, Vice President of Marketing at Allego. As was just discussed, we help marketers create, store, and share their most valuable asset, content. And I came up on the sales side, selling copiers door to door, then working in a sales training company called Rain Group, basically built a lot of learning programs to help sellers sell better. Eventually, I moved to product marketing at Dun & Bradstreet, as was mentioned in the introduction. So I've really spent my whole career at the intersection of marketing and sales. And yes, the joke up there is real. I do walk into companies and I see dead content everywhere. So here's how today is going to play out. Here's our agenda for today. First, we're going to walk through some challenges, the 3 reasons teams keep striking fool's gold instead of real gold with their content. Second, a new content framework, what AI rewards at the top of the funnel, what sellers want, and how to align your content strategy across the full funnel end to end to that framework. And third, there'll be some free resources, so be sure to stay with us till the end. You're going to leave with a content taxonomy blueprint you can put to work tomorrow. And you'll notice the goldmine theme of this presentation. We want to make this fun. We want to make this interactive, and a big shout out to Marcus on the Allego team who put these slides together. If you want to learn how he used AI to do this, he's your guy. So be sure to ask him in the comments, but he did a fantastic job to make this fun for us today. So excited for our session. All right. But before we go further, we want to hear from you. We want to make this relevant for you, right? You're taking time out of your day I want to hear from your challenges, what you're facing in your organization, and I'll try to make it as relevant to you as possible. I do think no matter what role you're in the content production and in your marketing team, you're going to see some value. But what content story feels most familiar to you in your organization, right? Is it that you've got great content, but nobody online finds it? Is it more of a top of funnel problem? Is it that sellers can't find the content they need? Maybe it's something that your sellers are struggling with at the bottom of the funnel and can't find the content you're creating. Is it that you're creating a lot of great stuff, but no one's really using it, right? Maybe it's not a findability problem. It's they're finding it, but they just don't find it to be valuable. Is it something around personalization? Perhaps you cater to a lot of different industries and to a lot of different segments, and it's hard to scale that content and make it relevant for each buyer, each audience. Really, I mean, there's so many different types of content challenges that we really want to understand sort of what the cohort here today is facing and try to make it as relevant to you as possible. So give folks a couple seconds here to complete the poll, and looking forward to seeing what the results say. And if you have other ones, be sure to add them in the comments. Okay, a couple more moments here. I think we can wrap up the poll. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Great content exists, but nobody online finds it. Okay, a lot of top of funnel problems. We're going to cover up that today. Content gets created, but never gets used. That's another big one, 46%. So I think those seem to be the two primary challenges. So good news is we're going to cover both of those. We'll start at the top of the funnel. So we'll talk a little bit about how you make your content more visible on AI and online. And then we're going to move to the bottom of the funnel challenges towards the end of the presentation. So depending on what's most important to you, be sure you stick around, and hopefully you get some value out of this great session today. Okay. And if you have other questions, reactions, be active in the comments. All right. So we boiled down the entire content struggle down to 3 reasons teams never strike gold. And we put these in the order of the funnel, like I said before, from top funnel to bottom funnel content challenges. So reason 1 is ghost town. Great content exists, but buyers in AI never find it. So that's the 40% of you that have that challenge. Reason 2 is fool's gold. That's what we call it. So content that looks really valuable at the surface level, but actually unintentionally so for most marketing teams is actively dragging your authority down. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that challenge is and how to solve it. And reason 3 is unmined value. Now we're at the bottom of the funnel. Now we're working with our sales teams and giving them content. This is gold content that's literally inside your organization. Maybe it's in a SharePoint drive. Maybe it's in Google Drive. Maybe you're using an enablement system like Allego or something else that makes it really hard for your sellers to find it, right? We're going to walk through each one, and I'll show you the cure for each. So we've done our best to cater this presentation to a wide array of content challenges, like I said. So if you're in demand gen, you're in content, you're a product marketing, you're a marketing leader, you're going to get something of value out of this conversation. So without further ado, let's start with reason number 1, ghost town. This is really the scenario where great content exists, but neither your buyers nor AI can find it. And 3 main culprits drive this, right? Reason number 1 is no clear authority, poor content structure, and fragmented topic ownership across your teams. So if you've ever published a great piece of content and watched it disappear into the void, maybe the 2nd, 3rd, 4th page of the Google search results, that's what we're calling ghost town. And I think most of us here actively know this, and it's sort of reflected in the poll results, but the rules just changed dramatically, right? AI has completely redefined what findable even means. And if you're following some of the Google news, you know that they're actively changing the way that their search experience works as well, with surfacing the AI answers and the AI interactivity at the top of the fold, and resulting in much less clicks to your content and to your site, right? So how do we overcome this challenge? What should we be thinking about to really think about content in this new reality? If you look at the domains AI search systems are actively citing, and again, this is data from SEMrush published in 2026, so it's relatively new research, although it's changing daily. You'll notice how at the top it's LinkedIn, it's Reddit, it's YouTube. These aren't the loudest brands, right? It's not the biggest ad spenders. These are just places where real conversations are happening, including probably us, right? We're in there talking with our communities, with peers that are like-minded with us and exchanging ideas, right? And this is where buyers are asking real questions, and practitioners are sharing real answers as well, right? And here's the signal underneath that. So AI citation is downstream of community citation. So if your content isn't useful enough to get quoted in a LinkedIn post or debated in a Reddit thread or referenced in a YouTube comment, AI isn't going to surface it either, right? So we have to be where the AI is getting its answers if we want to be visible at the top of the funnel. And that just completely changes the job for everyone in this room, right? The work doesn't end at publish and move on, right? You hit the publish button and you move on to your next content piece. Your content really has to be valuable enough. It has to be specific enough, it has to be useful enough, has to have a point of view and substance around it, that it actually earns its way into the conversations where your buyers actually spend time, right? So what does this mean? Here's the rule I want you to take home. If you want to remember something coming out of this presentation when you're thinking about these top funnel visibility challenges, AI rewards content at the intersection of three things, right? Number one is user demand. So what are buyers actually searching and asking about? And there's a lot of tools that have popped up now that sort of use proxies for what people are searching for and reverse engineer that into prompts and give you some sort of overall view of what might be people are asking about, but nobody really knows, right? I think you have to kind of look at your customer base. You have to look at your ICP and try to back into their challenges and be present in the communities and understand what they're asking about day to day, right? And reverse engineer that into your content strategy. So that's your user demand piece. Second one is business priority, right? So it has to be topics aligned to your ICP and your product, right? I mean, let's be honest, we're all in market to run a business and be profitable. So you have to kind of reverse engineer what's important to you into what aligns with your ICP. And you have to have some track record of having a valuable point of view on a topic. And you achieve this with consistency and focus and dedication, right? So I've seen a lot of content teams spread their thought leadership very far and wide and not tackle any real problem with substance. And that takes patience, that takes time, right? So you have to make sure that you're covering each topic that's relevant to your users, that they're actually concerned about, with a level of depth that actually adds value, right? So value in content is still king. No matter what the technology is and what the search dynamics are, the good content is still very much king. And three is authority, right? So clear answers that demonstrate expertise, right? So you have to have some authority around the content. And like I said, that comes from a track record, that comes from dedication, that comes from consistency. So if you only hit two of the three, you're going to lose. You hit demand, but you skip your ICP, you're driving the wrong traffic, right? You hit both, but lack the authority, AI is probably going to ignore it, right? Because you only wrote one piece on it and moved on. So the sweet spot is all three, and that doesn't happen overnight. So you got to have patience, you got to have dedication, and that's where you build a moat that really compounds over time. And I think the benefit is if you do this well, you'll also win at traditional search, right? So if such a thing even exists anymore, or will exist in the near future, right? So that's our first challenge. So reason number two is fool's gold. This is the worst kind of content because it actually looks valuable at surface level, but is actively hurting you and it's actively hurting your results. So what do I mean by this? These are your outdated pages on your blog that you confuse buyers and AI about what's current and what's meaningful. These are those duplicate topics where 10 of your own blog pages are actually competing for the same ranking and keyword and topic online. So they're actually bumping into each other. Said another way, this is really content cannibalization. So your authority leaks across these pages that should have really been one content piece with depth and rigor to it at the first place, right? So fool's gold drags down everything else that you've built. And it's one that we don't see too often in the moment because we're excited about something new in a particular week, or maybe your leader told you to write about something sort of spur of the moment. But when we zoom out and we look at everything we've built over time and those that may have been in your roles before you, right? So let's be honest, sometimes content's created by people that were in your role before, and that's at nobody's fault, but you'll start to notice the long-term damage you've been creating unintentionally, right? So it's really important for us to go back, look at what we've published on a particular content, before we write anything new, right? So I'm going to say that again. Whenever we're writing a piece of content, I really urge everybody on this call to go back to your library, look at what else you've written on that content. Is it a duplicate? Have I already talked about this? Can I make what's already in my library more valuable, right? That's the rhythm we need to get into to overcome this challenge. So the fix for fool's gold is really just shifting this model and shifting this mindset, right? So the old model was, I'm going to publish it, I'm going to promote it, and I'm going to forget it and move on to the next thing, right? It's really easy to fall into this trap and a content treadmill that just never stops. And I like to think this model as a news feed, right? You're publishing content based on what was important or interesting in the moment. But the new model is really to build permanent assets that compound in value over the long haul and over time. So you think of it like a library, like I just said. You go back and publish new editions of the books that are already on the shelf, right? This is the best analogy and metaphor for this that I really want you to take away today. The hub is your authority page. So think about this as like a hub and spoke model, right? The centerpiece is your authority page. It's going to be one comprehensive page on your blog or on your site that owns a major topic related to the product and services you offer. And then we also talked about how that overlaps with some of the challenges and the discussions your ICP is having. And the spokes are going to be the subtopic pages related to that main content, right? So those are going to be focus pages that maybe resolve a specific question or maybe dig into or double click on a particular topic and link back to the hub, right? Because we all understand how and know that linking within your own content is important for technical SEO and for ranking. So AI maps this structure when they're crawling your site, right? Buyers navigate that structure as well when they're browsing your site. So whether it's Google crawling your site, whether it's AI crawling your site, whether it's buyers, it's really important to establish this almost taxonomy and structure of your content on your site. So it makes it easy to understand what's your point of view on a particular topic, how much depth do you have around it, how unique is it, and how valuable is it, right? And I can't stress enough how important it is to think of your digital content structure around this concept. So this is one of the most critical things you can do to improve your search and AI rankings over time. And the added benefit is that removing duplicate or multiple surface level content pages also helps your web visitors get a better impression of your brand and get more value out of a fewer pieces of content that have more depth and are updated continually. You can actually spend more time updating what you have versus sort of spur of the moment, creating content and moving on, right? So this is a really important concept to walk away with if you really want to solve some of these top of funnel challenges. Okay. All right. So let's move on to reason number 3, unmined value. And this is one that product marketers really feel in their bones. And I felt it myself being a product marketer back in the day. Product marketing creates the content. Sales can't find it. Deals never see it. I know that 40% or so of us on the call today mentioned this. If you're familiar with Forrester, they have an analyst. His name is Peter Ostro. He's sort of a guru in the sales content management space. And he says, taxonomy determines what sellers see, how AI behaves, what gets recommended, and what shows up in dashboards. When that taxonomy is messy or outdated, sellers lose trust fast. And once they stop trusting your library, they stop using it entirely, right? So behind every successful content strategy is a strong taxonomy. And I want you to think about this both at the top of the funnel for your blog, as well as your sales content library at the bottom of the funnel, right? So this taxonomy is going to determine how content is categorized, how it's discovered, how it's recommended, right? Whether it's humans or AI. And it influences not only search engines, but also how sellers and AI systems find the right answers, right? So it's really important to think of it from a structural standpoint, from an organizational standpoint first, and make sure that we're referencing that whenever we're publishing or creating new content going forward. And before you rebuild your sales content library, we always recommend our clients to do this one thing first. Survey your sales team. They hold the answers to what content actually matters for them. They're on the front lines, right? They know what they need to help advance a deal forward. And I'm not going to walk through all 5 questions, right? We'll share the slides afterwards and you can have this as a reference. And you'll want to tweak this to your business. Obviously, these are good ones to get started, but probably aren't perfect for your organization. But I'm going to call out the one that always breaks the room open, right? It's question 3. Where do you struggle to find the right content? Ask that and you get a complete list of every taxonomy and discoverability failure in your library. So that's going to be a great starting point for you to rethink your taxonomy if you have one. If you don't one, you can create one. And obviously now with ChatGPT and Claude, you can have a conversation around this and think about how you want to structure your taxonomy. But this survey really takes 20 minutes, maybe max, to run, and saves you 6 months of building the wrong thing from the start. So I really would encourage everybody to do a qualitative survey of your sales team, really get a pulse of kind of what's happening on the front lines as you go to tackle this problem of sales content in your library. Okay. All right. Now I want to flip from problem to solution for unmined value for your content for the sales team. And here's the framework, right? There's 3 steps that map directly to the problems we just walked through. So step 1 is create it. You're going to capture authority from real buyer conversations. And it's important, right? To build trust with sales, you're going to have some knowledge of what's happening on the front lines and continually update your messaging to reflect what's worked in the field and what's not, right? Because let's be honest, content has to be battle tested before sellers start trusting it and using it more, right? And this is a big miss I see often, being disconnected from this process. So you have to build trust with sales, and that starts with understanding what they're facing in the market. Okay. Step 2 is answer it. So structure that knowledge into clear, retrievable answers. Sellers are often looking for quick answers in a piece of content versus the piece of content itself, right? They're running from deal to deal, they're running from meeting to meeting. So the more we can build infrastructure to help them query your content and search your content and get access to the answers quickly, the more time both marketing and sales is going to save. And this also aligns with how search behaviors are evolving, interacting with AI in a Q&A style chat, right? So we're really starting to see a shift from, going and searching a library to interacting with AI at the front end, not only on the buyer side, but also on the sales side as well, right? They're expecting that now. And 3 is really about personalization. So personalize it. Got to deliver your content in the context of an actual deal. So instead of thinking of our content organization in terms of topic format, we have to start thinking about our content in terms of the sales process, right? That's how the sellers are thinking. So you got to map your content to the sales journey. So whether that's, awareness to consideration to decision, that's a simple first step, right? So you got to think about your content in terms of the sales journey, not in terms of topic or is it a PowerPoint or it's a PDF, right? So you got to really think and walk and talk almost like a seller if you want to drive adoption of your content and consistent use of your content. So second, how can we serve this content up in a way that's actually easily personalized for each deal, right? Whether that's their industry, it's their persona, or some other attribute, because sellers want to be as relevant to their clients' needs and problems as they possibly can, right? And they can do that through content, but oftentimes the challenge is it's not personalized for their needs, right? And they need to do a little bit of more work on that content. And that's really when it starts to get a little bit tricky and they start going off script a little bit. So a recent Gartner CMO study says on average about 8% of a company's revenue is spent on marketing. Yet the majority of that investment is wasted because the content and messages that we're creating as marketing teams just never end up reaching the buyer online or even via our sales team, right? So let's walk through how to solve this problem. So here's the pro tip, right? Buyers and buyer conversations are the single source of truth in your company. Conversation intelligence and sales meeting recordings are really our best source for being a fly on the wall and understanding what's happening on the front lines. Your sellers are going to be hearing objections, questions, use cases every single day. That's the most valuable raw material you have access for your content and to make it valuable for your sales teams. So capture that knowledge and turn it into structured content the entire organization can use. And here's why that matters more than ever. That structured content becomes the training ground for AI when sellers have questions about how to communicate a message on the front lines as well, right? We talked a little bit about how search is not only evolving at the top of the funnel, search is also evolving at the bottom of the funnel with your internal sales team. Your internal sales team is now expecting to be able to ask a question and get an answer, right? Or find the right piece of content. So we have to kind of meet everybody where they are and how the search dynamics are evolving. So let me show you what create it looks like in practice for us at Allego. We built an AI researcher and content creator, we call it Smart Docs. It basically pulls from multiple sources at once, whether that's your internal documents, it's your approved websites externally, it could be your product data, it could be buyer conversations, right? It could be really any first or third party data source or content source. And it synthesizes them into a finished structured document in minutes. So things that used to take content teams days or weeks now take seconds. When you can generate authoritative content like this from multiple sources really quickly, and AI is enabling us to do this now, the bottleneck really stops being production, and it's really about the quality of the source material that you're giving the AI, right? I'm sure we've all experimented with ChatGPT to create content, or maybe Claude, or your tool of choice, sort of garbage in, garbage out, right? We have to make sure the source material for AI is of value. Plus, you have more time to maintain the content and keep it fresh over time, right? So now that's the challenge. We have to make sure it's very easy to create content with AI, but we have to now keep that content up to date. Otherwise, we're going to lose trust with sales again in a couple of months, right? So there's nothing worse than stale content that frustrates sellers in a content system. And that's why the work we just talked about, so capturing that buyer knowledge in a structured form, is so important. It becomes really the raw material for everything downstream to keep your content fresh and keep it relevant for sales and keep it relevant on the front lines, right? So here's how it works. Users pick a template. It could be one of the out-of-the-box templates that Allego provides, or it could be something that you build. The template creates a layout, which can be edited or moved around in a modular way, right? And all the user now has to do is to approve the sources of the content. Again, we talked about that. It could be your internal conversations. It could be a mix of documents you already have. It could be external websites. And that's the full extent of prompt engineering anyone needs to learn to do this well, right? So from there, the AI does the research, the synthesis, it assembles the finished document inside Allego and systems like this. And what that structured content looks like is what you're seeing in your screen, right? It's competitive battle cards. This can be company trackers. It could be technical FAQs. It could be case studies. These used to take days to build and even longer to update. So with structured content underneath and AI, they really take seconds, and you can keep them up to date on an ongoing basis as well, which is a huge bonus for building trust with the sales team. So step two in this area is really answer it, right? So here's the most important sentence in this whole deck, I would say. Sellers don't always want content. Sometimes they just want answers. And AI now retrieves the best answer instantly from the content you already have. So your seller asks a question, AI surfaces exactly the right answer and the content it came from in a footnote. So that sounds obvious, but it completely changes how you should think about structuring your library of supporting content. The behavior shift is sort of already happening. We talked about this, right? Sellers used to hunt for a PDF or a deck on a topic, then dig through it, and maybe there's a paragraph there that answers the buyer's question. Now they just have to ask the question the way we all ask our favorite GPT or our AI model. And here's what most marketers miss. The answer now can now come back with footnotes, right? So those footnotes are your content, very much like how it happens on Google. So AI isn't really replacing your library. It's becoming the new front door to it, right? Much like we said, AI versus traditional search. The answer is the hook. Your content is what they click into next, right? So versus the other way around. So which leads to the pro tip, and it's a design shift. The unit of content is changing from the document to actually the answer. So that's what sellers really are after, and it's going to be almost the gateway to your content and adoption. So for whatever it is, 20 years, 30 years, we were building pages, we were building decks, we were building PDFs, and we made the buyer or the seller do the work to find the content and then extract the answer from inside it. And AI is really just flipping that now, right? Every page in your library, every content in your library now has two jobs. One is to resolve a specific sales question and be the source of a seller, be a source that the seller clicks into once the AI surfaces it, right? So those are really important new dynamics that we have to take away with how search and AI is evolving. Step three is personalize it. So this is the third way in which we can drive better adoption and use of our content with sales and at the bottom of the funnel and even with buyers. And this is really where digital sales rooms come in, DSRs, as they're also known. They put content inside of the context of an actual deal, right? So if you're not familiar with digital rooms, you can think of them as a microsite or a landing page sellers can use with their prospect. They capture engagement around every content piece or asset that gets shared. with the buying committee that actually enters that microsite. And now the benefit for marketing is you can actually see who engaged, what content they viewed, and when it actually influenced a deal, right? So you can start connecting your content to buyer activity, and you can start connecting that buyer activity back to your opportunity data in Salesforce as well with this type of capability. And that's really the closed loop attribution on content we've been really looking for as marketing leaders, right? So that's a great way to help you not only personalize the content, put it in the context of a deal, but also figure out, is it actually working on the front lines? So the pro tip here in personalization is that really the packaging matters as much as the content itself, right? So I'm going to say that again. The packaging of the content for the sales team matters as much as the content and the importance and value of that content itself, right? So the most common way reps are sharing content today is in an email attachment, right? And the moment that file leaves the rep's inbox, the seller goes blind, we go blind as marketers. There's no view into who opened it, who forwarded it, what actually mattered. So these microsites change that completely. The seller can personalize the experience for a specific deal, gets a branded landing page for them built by the marketing team. The right assets are already there, right? In the right order. They're tailored messaging for that buyer's situation. And because it's a live environment, the seller sees exactly what the buyer does, right? So when the buyer comes in, much like they do on your website, think of this as a web page for your individual deal for a rep. So who they invited in, what they spent time on, what pages they viewed in the content, what did they skip, all of that starts to become more visible for us as well. And that insight is what really sets a great seller apart. It's the difference between hoping a deal is moving and knowing exactly where to push it next with the intelligence they're getting from a system like this. So it's the same content, it's just a different packaging of that content will drive a lot of adoption with your sales team as well, right? So we're approaching sort of the end part of the presentation here, but I want to show you a team that lived out some of these problems and really dug their way out. This is an Allego client. Their name is Entravision. They're a global advertising, media, and ad tech company. They're in 18 countries. They have over 1,000 employees. They're publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. They work with a wide variety of industries and different buyers, and different data and different content is important to all those buyers, right? So that was one of their primary challenges. So imagine the content sprawl that comes with that kind of scale of content. So here's what they were dealing with. I'll walk you through it, right? So the marketing team at Entravision was really a proactive one. They were anticipating the needs across their markets and producing a wide range of materials in lots of versions, right? Think lots of different slide decks for lots of different verticals that they were tackling. And that's what each of these icons on the screen is represented. Think of each of those as like a content item, right, for their sales team. And it lived in a Google Drive, and every single file there was potentially important to somebody. That's why nothing ever got deleted, right? I mean, that's typically what we do in a marketing team. We create this content, we spend a lot of time on it, we put it in a repository. Hey, just in case, right? I know it's important to somebody, so I'm going to leave it up there. And getting any kind of usage metric required an IT request, right? So there's not much Google Drive can do to tell you, how the content is being used or leveraged. So nobody even bothered to ask. When they finally pulled the data, the Google Drive had about 8,000 files in it. And their first move was to filter out people who created the files and the curators on the marketing team, because they wanted to see what the real consumption looked like on the sales side, right? So get rid of all the marketing usage data from it. Let's look at what sales is using it for. Here's what they found. Out of those 8,000 files, only about 400 had ever been viewed by sales, just once, right? One time or more. So that's around 5% of the entire library that have ever in its lifetime been opened by a seller. So the 95%, it was created, it was stored, but again, it was just sort of like just in case someone finds it valuable, right? It was never touched after that. And it really gets worse when you look at the prior year alone. Only 114 of those files had been viewed by sales in the last 12 months. So only 78 of them had been viewed 3 or more times. So that's about 1% of the entire library. So that's really what unmined value looks like, right? I mean, all this content, I'm sure it was created for a good purpose. It could have been valuable for somebody, but what it ended up doing was actually paralyze the sales team, and they couldn't find what they needed and didn't end up using it anyway, right? So here's a lesson the Entravision team took away. They introduced measurement into the content process. So that stopped them from replicating a complex system that wasn't working. And you can't fix what you don't measure, right? So once they measured, the path forward it really became a little bit more obvious. So here's sort of how they architected their system, and I'll walk you through this picture from left to right. On the left, the marketing team built content and dropped it into a shared file system, and sales is supposed to pull what they need from it, right? And that's how almost every team in this room operates today. In the middle, that's where the problem lives. It's every super important slide, whether it's a product overview, maybe it could be a case study, or it could be a competitive comparison, gets rebuilt inside every vertical that they're going after, right? Whether it's a healthcare pitch deck, could be a financial services one, automotive, FinServe, could be the same core message, just 5 different containers essentially, right? 5 different update cycles, and again, more chances for the messaging to sort of drift out of sync. And on the right is what measurement finally revealed. So the internal views, the shares, the external views, that's the data layer that made the sprawl visible for the first time. And here's a pro tip in this picture. When one critical piece of knowledge has to live inside 5 bespoke deliverables or 5 derivative versions, you're just building a maintenance burden that you can never keep up with, right? It's just not practically possible. So this is some of the math behind that. Entravision operated in about 60 industries, 25 markets. That would mean about 1,500 unique decks in the library. Each deck had about 9 key slides. So that comes out to 37,500 unique slides marketing would have to build and maintain, which is insane, right? Nobody can govern that. Nobody can update that. Nobody can use that. So the shift they made was simple, but quite radical, right? They stopped building individual unique decks. They started building lookups. So these are modular components sellers can retrieve on demand, assembled in context. So this is basically one source of truth and infinite combinations, right? So they're creating sort of that single modular lookup of all the data points, and then updating that single source of truth, and then it's syndicating it into all of the different decks. And the end product is every deck is relevant, every deck is maintained, and sellers can use these for their bespoke situations. But marketing doesn't have to maintain all the slides. They just have to maintain the source system and the data points that are the ones that are changing, right? So when they made that shift, they went from 37,500 slides to really 187. So that's 99% fewer assets. And once they made that shift, obviously usage went up. Sellers were leveraging the content more. It was kept up to date on a more regular cadence. So they built that trust with the sales team, and then built a much better relationship with their sales team. And now, the number that gets the CFO's attention is markets in the top quartile of using this technology powered by Allego outperform the bottom quartile of their sellers by about 42% in quota attainment, right? Because the reps that were, the top performers were leveraging the content. They were finding the content easily. They were armed with more relevant conversations in front of their buyers. And ultimately, they just did better, right? So content creation and maintenance didn't just get more efficient, it moved the revenue number, right? It really helped move the revenue number forward as well, which is obviously a great story for marketing and leadership as well as kind of the primary contributor and support mechanism for sales to have that content in front of their buyers. So we're almost at the end here, and I'm looking forward to getting your questions answered. But I really want to land this with each of you specifically, by role. I know we've got a wide variety of roles on this call today. But for the marketing leaders in the room, your story is really number one. It's that invisible content that we talked about at the beginning. You really have to focus your strategy on buyer questions and authority and move away from the volume game, right? How can I go back to my library, right, and make sure that I'm building authority around the topic that is relevant to me and to my ICP? For those of you that are in content marketing, content marketers, your story is really number two. It's the fool's gold. You really have to use that topic cluster and hub and spoke pages, so AI can actually find what you build, right? And then the buyers on your site have a better experience as a result as well. And for the product marketers in the room, your story is number 3, right? So this is the unmined value story that we just went through. It's turning that messaging into answers that, buyers and sellers are asking for, and just activating that content inside of real deals and in a way that sellers really care about. So find the one that fits your role and start there is my guidance to everybody. So if you're thinking about, how to structure your content better, we're sharing a resource after the session, so be on the lookout for that. It walks through how to design a taxonomy that works for both marketing and sales, and it's really a great starting point for building a more structured content foundation. So be sure to check that out. We'll be sharing that as a resource for everyone that registered and attended today. And we started with, again, that simple question: how much of your content actually gets used? And the truth is, most of you really are sitting on a content gold mine. Folks can't find. So you got the map, you got the 3 problems, you got the framework. Hopefully you enjoyed that customer story. So I encourage all of you to go dig out of that hole, and hopefully you'll be able to extract more value out of the great content that we're building. So thank you for everybody for joining us today, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for a great presentation, Dennis. And I agree, those were very cool slides. I need to learn how to do that.
Yeah, you got to ask Marcus, right? Like I
Okay.
said.
Love it. So let's get to a couple of questions.
Sure.
Everybody, this is the time to post your questions over in that Q&A tab if you haven't already. And I'll just tell you that some people find the Q&A the most valuable part of any presentation, because you get almost like one-on-one consulting. So please do post your questions right now, and we'll get to as many as we can, starting with the most popular. So to kick us off, Dennis, if a marketing team wanted to start small, because what you've presented here is really inspiring and also kind of big.
It's big.
A
It's
lot.
a lot. Yeah, we covered a lot, right?
It's a
All the
big
way across
project.
the funnel.
Yeah. So where would you recommend people begin if they don't have the bandwidth or the resources to hit the whole plan right away? Like, what's a good first step?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I would say, you got to figure out what's most important to your business, right? I mean, what's your priority across the funnel? So we walk through, top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel. Do you have more of a, sales content issue? And maybe your win rates are low, your inconsistent execution in the field. Is that really what's dragging your business down? Or is the problem more at the top of the funnel, right? People don't know you exist and people can't find you, right? So first question here is, if you're a small team or you don't know where to start, you got to prioritize, right? Because you can't do all of this in one go. This was meant to be broad on purpose, just to make sure everyone on this call got some value out of the presentation, wearing different hats. But that's step 1. But I think step 2 is really where the rubber hits the road. You have to start with a structure, right? So step 1 is, think about what your priority is. But step 2, within the problem that you're having, the next step is pretty clear, and actually the same across both problems. You need to have a structured content taxonomy for AI to find your content. And you also have to have a structured content taxonomy for sellers to find your content, right? So you really have to ask yourself, have I defined that, right? Does it still hold up given where our business is and where our priorities are, where our product is evolving? And have I, focused on the right topics in that taxonomy, right? So if you're a small team, like I said, it's very easy to spread yourself thin and try to do a lot of piece of content that is surface level. But I would recommend for small teams, or if you're kind of struggling where to get started, go deep on one topic and build some expertise there, and then move on. Because if you do a lot of surface level content, you're never going to get cited by AI. You're never going to build domain authority around that content, right? So it's really important that you really focus. And it's really hard to say no sometimes. That's the most challenging part about that prioritization is, someone's going to want a piece of content on something, but you have to kind of, stick to it and really focus on building authority around one topic. So that would be my recommendation.
I love that. And just kind of carrying on from that same answer, would you say smaller companies can achieve significant benefits in the short term, even by tackling like your example with IntraVision and 37,000
Yeah,
slides is
yeah, it's
enormous.
big.
If a company has a much smaller amount of content, but still a lot for their team to manage, do you see that actually having a positive impact
Oh,
if they
absolutely.
get, if they
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that structure
absolutely.
right?
I mean, that's the benefit of AI now, right? I mean, what
Mm,
used to take us weeks or months to create now takes seconds. So
mm.
creation isn't really the bottleneck anymore. It's going to be, maintaining and organizing. Actually, we've always been challenged with maintaining and organizing. Let's be honest. Nobody likes to, clean their home, but everyone's really happy to buy something new for their home, right? That's the analogy that I use. Like, it's very easy to go to the store, buy something new, plop it in your house. But then when it starts getting cluttered, nobody wants to clean it up, right? I mean, content is very much the same way. I actually used a funny analogy at an event, a couple of weeks ago for our customers, where I have two young boys, so easy to buy them toys, right? But then the playroom gets cluttered. What ends up happening is they just play with nothing, right? Similar like sellers, you give them a lot of content, they're gonna get analysis paralysis and just not end up using your content. So I would say like fewer focused pieces of content, right? And make sure that they're updated. That's the key, right? So spend more time on the governance, on the maintenance, and that's going to help you. But you have to obviously have the governing kind of structure behind that as well. So the taxonomy piece is really important.
Love that. That's great. All
Mhm.
right. So our next question is, how do you recommend measuring seller adoption in a way that actually reflects business impact?
Great question. Again, this all ties to your CRM data. So if your content isn't tied to real deal outcomes, you're just never going to be able to make that case, right? So I think the old school methodology here is, I'm going to create content. Hey, it's getting downloaded, it's getting viewed. Like, sellers must be adopting it, but that's not really the case, right? So we have to make sure that the content reps are using are put within the context of a deal. And you can't do that without connecting your content engine to your CRM. So you might be using Salesforce, you might be using HubSpot, whatever CRM you're using, you have to make sure that's connected to your content system. And that's why we at Allego, we see so many organizations, they're using SharePoint, they're using Google Drive, they're using something simple to store their content, but it's just such a miss because you're not able to put that within the context of a deal now, right? So technologies like Allego can help you tie that bridge. So I would really recommend, if you want to measure adoption, you want to measure impact, make the investment and make sure that you're connecting your content system that's storing all this valuable content, but it's also putting it within the context of a deal. So when reps start winning, right, you can say, hey, they used this collection of content to win that deal, right? Now it becomes much easier to sort of communicate to the business the value of the content you're delivering. And then you keep the ones that are important up to date, right? So it's another prioritization mechanism. So for small teams, like you said, hey, I've got so much content. How do I maintain it? Maintain the ones that the reps are using, right? And prioritize those. And maybe you declutter and get rid of the ones that they aren't using. Like, less is more, really. With content, you want to have fewer, more focused pieces that have more depth and are updated continually versus just like a lot of different variations. Entravision was a very unique case because they led with their data, and the data point was very different for each vertical. So they had to use sort of a different solution where we at Allego feed those data points dynamically into the slides and keep them up to date. But that's not always the challenge. That's a unique challenge for a larger organization that's more complex. But hopefully that answers the question.
Terrific. And the last question we have right now, you touched on this a little bit actually. Actually, we got one more in, so take that back. So, what is the best way to get buy-in from your sales teams? You kind of addressed that a little bit in your prior answer, but is there anything else that you would recommend doing to try to get the team on board, the sales team?
For sure. Yeah, I think it comes with partnership and good relationship building, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we have to treat them as an extension of the content team. So organizations that I see do really well with sales, partner with them and have a really close relationship with them. That comes with intention. That comes with making it a regular cadence, not something that you do once and walk away. So it takes dedication, but partner with your top reps, partner with your top sales leaders, hear them out. We said, hey, start with a survey. So send that survey, try to understand them, listen to them, and show that you listened and incorporate some of their recommendations. That's step one. Step two is also listening to their sales conversations, right? So conversation intelligence, being a fly on the wall, those recorded sales meetings are gold. That's going to tell you what buyers are asking, what challenges they're running into in the sales situation. So the more that you can anticipate those and create content before sales even asks for it,
Hmm.
that's such a magical way to build relationships, and the sales team is going to love you for that. So I would really recommend you, again, partner with sales. I've seen organizations build almost a sales advisory board. So they take one rep from each function. It could be an SDR, could be an account manager, could be a client success person, even could be an account executive. And they just meet once a quarter, right? Hear them out, survey them, get their thoughts, and also proactively listen to the calls too. right? And try to synthesize what's happening in those calls. But again, that's hard to do at scale. That's why technologies like Allego come into play and AI comes into play to synthesize everything that I'm hearing. How can I distill that down into content, and how do I keep that up to date over time? So I would recommend that.
Love that. Great. Here's an interesting question from Abby. If AI visibility comes from top domains like Reddit, how does a company build content on Reddit? Should we be thinking about doing that at all, in your opinion?
Yeah, so this goes back to my point about authority, right? So your content has to be valuable enough to reach your audience and resonate with them. So when they're in those conversations, they say, "Hey, I read this piece of content. It was really interesting. Here's what it says about XYZ problem." So if your content isn't authoritative enough, it isn't deep enough in terms of expertise, it's not going to get cited by those AI tools, and people aren't going to pick those up. People aren't going to use those in their conversations. So it's sort of a problem of focus, because I see a lot of people try to spread themselves really thin and write very surface level content and focus on volume. Pick a lane, pick a topic, and own the expertise around that topic, and be dedicated to it, and AI will pick that up. You'll get rankings on Google. People will notice that content. People will cite that content. People will share that content. And it's sort of a great cycle that kind of builds on itself over time.
And you're referring to content on Reddit specifically, or just your own website, your own properties?
Yeah, your own website, your own
Yeah.
properties. If you have the right level of expertise, Google will pick it up, and customers will find that in their search channels. It'll be mentioned in LinkedIn and other forums, right? And buyers will organically share that in those forums as well, and it will definitely help you improve your visibility online. So, but it doesn't happen overnight, right? So I think most of us are looking for a quick hack. I'm sorry if people tell you there is a quick hack; they're probably trying to sell you something. Really important for you to stay dedicated, own a topic, own the authority around that topic, and it will ensure that you build your expertise around that, and then it'll get visible in the market over time. But it takes dedication for sure.
So just to make sure I'm clear, because I think Abby's wondering if we should be trying to put content out on Reddit. Are you saying
No,
don't do
I wouldn't
that,
do that.
develop
No, I
it?
mean,
Yeah.
those types of tactics honestly get flagged. I mean, if
Uh,
you create a Reddit account and you're going to go there and you're going to post something, people are going to see through that. I think the easiest way to get content on Reddit could be through your advocates. So if
mhm.
you have customer champions and advocates that are already present in those forums, I would say arm them with that content, and they'll probably do you a solid and share that content organically. But if you go in there, create an account, put it in, it's going to get removed, and we don't definitely don't recommend that approach, right? The second piece is, like I said, it could get picked up from different sources, and buyers are going to find that, and then they're going to go back to Reddit if they have an account, and they're going to share it. It's tricky, right? You can't really force something into Reddit. It's just you
Got
might
to
as well
earn
use
it.
paid media if you want to do that, right? Versus
Yeah,
organic. Yeah.
makes sense. That's great. Great information. Okay, this I think is our last question. So, what is the one domino that I can push to get the ball rolling? So, let's say we're primed and motivated, excited, inspired, ready to tackle this whole big project. Where should we begin? Is it the survey that you talked about earlier, or is there a step before that?
Yeah, I think step one is really think about your content as a library versus a news feed. I think we talked about this. So I think it's really easy to get sort of stuck in the day-to-day routine of there's a fire drill here, there's an ask here, this topic came up in the news now, I need to write something about that. I think step one is really, that first domino is discipline. You have to think about what's my content taxonomy and structure, right? So what's that hub and spoke model? Like what are the different hubs of topics that I want to focus on and write on? And which one am I going to focus on first? And whenever I create new content, I have to go back to that and really update something, have a bias for updating something that's already there versus just creating something new. And that takes a little bit more effort, because it's always easy to start from a blank piece of paper, but it's much
Mm,
harder to say, hey, I've already got something, I want to write something similar. How do I merge these two things, right? So that's always a bit harder, but in the long run, you start adding depth to that content, right? That's already there. You actually keep that content up to date over time, and you reduce the chance of like multiple content pieces saying the same thing and confusing the buyer. So I would say that's a really key sort of discipline to achieve that I think will pay off in the long run.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dennis, for an
Yeah,
amazing presentation
okay.
today. I think I
Thank
learned a
you.
lot myself. And
Awesome.
thank you again to Allego for sponsoring today's session. So, everyone here, we do truly value your feedback, as you know. So, please click on that link that's popping up on your screen. It's being posted in chat to answer a quick survey so that we know what you thought about today's session. And thanks again for joining us today. Can't wait to see you at the next Marketing Profs event.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.